Look at that, I'm back so soon. Let's just say I've got a lot of time on my hands. In the previous episode, we discussed a certain spy master being a fish person and even a woman. And now for something even more ambitious. Identities. Everyone's got one, and in A Song of Ice and Fire, some people have more than one. Currently in the story, only a handful of them have been confirmed, such as Brynden Rivers being the Three-Eyed Crow, and Griff being John Connington. But the possibility for future identity reveals is endless, and we're about to discuss them all. Note that the phrase all applies to the potential ideas of Benjen, Dario, Quaithe, Coltans, and Euron, and a few other crackpot fever dreams that come to mind. This theory will also be discussing specifically identities in terms of humans, so note that Princess Rhaenys being Galarian the Kitten, or Ned being a pigeon deserve their own video, and as a result will not be included in this one. Alright, let's begin. Benjen, as you know, disappeared from the story early on, and as a result his identity has been disputed many times, often being compared to Cold Hands because, as everyone knows, the show is canon. I must admit there is a great deal of mounting evidence for Benjen becoming Cold Hands, as he hides his face from Bran and wears black clothing like a man of the Night's Watch. However, the largest piece of evidence which disproves this is the fact that George R. R. Martin says he isn't Cold Hands. This, as you know, hasn't stopped some of the more unimaginative and persistent fans from thinking this is true, but for now, I think the fact that George R. R. Martin specifically said that he isn't Cold Hands makes me think that George does actually have someone in mind for Cold Hands as true identity. But anyway, that's for later in the video. People have compared Benjen to Mance Rayder as he serves as sort of a teaching figure for Jon in the north, and Mance did say that he was present for the Feast of Winterfell. Additionally, you could make the connection of Qhorin Halfhand saying a Night's Watch brother in the wildlings is worth 1,000 against them. People have also compared Benjen to Rattleshirt and other wildlings for all the reasons I just explained. But perhaps the most loopy of these theories involves a certain blue-haired sellsword. Daario Naharis is a violent yet devilishly handsome sellsword who seduces a 14-year-old girl and offers to kill her enemies. Therefore, it would seem weird for theorists to equate this chaotic neutral with the somewhat lawful good Benjen Stark, unless we incorporate some geography into the mix. Benjen Stark goes out on a ranging in Agot to find out what happened to some D&D wannabes. Short answer: nothing good. Then, in Assos, Daario shows up looking all blue and seductive and murdery. It isn't completely implausible to think that in such time Benjen could have travelled from the north to Yunkai in the space of about 1.5 books. What's more, both are described as being somewhat cheerful, as a hint of laughter is often described as being present around Benjen, and of course Daario has a joyous love of violence and debauchery. Additionally, both characters are described as having blue eyes.
Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. Eyes you'll shut forever.
Although Benjen's eyes are described as more of a grey-blue, whereas Daario's are almost purple. But maybe that's just the snow reflecting off Benjen's eyes. However, despite them never appearing in the same place, their characters aren't particularly similar. As the killing machine, Daario doesn't really compare to the Honourable Reserve Benjen Stark residing in the Honourable Night's Watch, where everyone is equal and all of the highest positions are taken by members of noble houses. Oops. Anyway, seeing as we're on the topic of Daario's almost purple eyes, let's talk about the Blackfires. The Phagon theory is commonly known as young Griff masquerading as a Targaryen, but certain details about young Griff's infamous theory share some significance with Daario's, like the fact that he has the eye color property of a Targaryen or a Targaryen off-brand, and the fact that both Daario and young Griff used blue hair to disguise themselves. One could see this as a symbol of the Blackfires, as Griff and Illyrio were planning on young Griff marrying Daenerys to merge their armies. This is a stretch, so I think I'll leave it there before people start to think I have a bias over young Griff. So yeah, I'm sure Daario isn't Griff, not at all. Anyway, perhaps the most infamous theory about Daario is that He's a pirate, but not just any pirate. I of course refer to Euron Greyjoy. Euron first makes his appearance in Pike in Essos after potentially paying an assassin to kill Balon so that he can take the throne for himself. What's so intriguing about this is the fact that all of Euron's appearances on the Iron Islands coincide with Daario's absences and vice versa. Additionally, Euron fits the profile of Daario, being a similarly murderous figure and possibly hiring someone to kill his brother and political opponent, just like how he offered to murder Daenerys' political opponents. The example of the blue hair being used as a disguise could also be used as evidence in this case. Furthermore, Euron makes it clear that he has intentions.
I want you to ask him what his intentions are towards your grandmother.
Ask him his intentions? Sorry, are we in the 17th century?
Intentions to marry Daenerys with his charming personality and take her dragons for himself to cause an apocalyptic event. And, as we already know, Daario has already put the charm on the child. However, another promising identity concerning Euron isn't necessarily a specific person, but rather a connection. For you see, Euron clearly has or had some connection to Brynden Rivers or the Three-Eyed Crow. There are many obvious connections, such as the fact that Euron is known as the Crow's Eye and he wears a black eye patch similar to how Brynden only has one good eye. And when Bran has his dream in which he falls, he looks down on the skulls of dreamers who failed to fly. This could explain why Euron doesn't seem too alright in the head. There is also the fact that Euron is hooked on Shade of the Evening, which foretells psychedelic apocalypse, somewhat similar to Green Dreams if they were directed by David Lynch. And that the power to walk would explain how he is able to coordinate a fleet of ships manned only by mutes. Despite this, there is clearly another theory, so obvious it is a wonder nobody noticed it before. You see, throughout Akok, Euron was masquerading as Renly Baratheon. When Catelyn Stark arrives at Renly's camp at the beginning of the book, Renly is described as loud, boastful and charming, just like Euron. Additionally, Renly chooses not to ally with Stannis despite their forces combined, as well as the Starks being able to outnumber the Lannisters. The reasoning for this is clearly because Euron wishes for these forces to turn on each other, making it easier for him to enact his plan later down the line. And of course, he'd rally against Stannis, known to be one of the best naval commanders against the Greyjoy Rebellion. And when he realized he had to leave and return to the Iron Islands, he faked his death by making everyone think that they saw his death. When it was merely Shade of the Evening, he slipped into everyone's wine to make them believe it. This does hit a snag when you consider that supposedly Euron only found the Shade of the Evening after taking it from the warlocks in Karth, which he hadn't overthrown yet. But maybe he'd found some before this, as he boasted in the Kingsmoot about travelling all over Westeros and Essos. However, the most obvious clue for this is that between Agot and Akok, Renly's eyes mysteriously change from green to blue. Cold Hands is perhaps the most mysterious character in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is certainly saying something, and we've already discussed his connection with Benjen. However, it could be possible that his identity lies with a different brother of the Night's Watch, as many have posited that his black clothes could be those of Will or Waymar Royce from the prologue, as a manner of giving them relevance by shoehorning them back into the story, as if the prologue couldn't simply be to introduce the world and create an exciting and intriguing opening. I mean, come on guys, why can't you just accept that not every character needs to go somewhere? As a result, I will have to strike this theory from the record, as when discussing Cold Hands, the Children of the Forest claim that he is very old, and Will and Waymar Royce strike me as very spry young fellows. Because of this, I myself have come up with an explanation as to the zombification of his character and what it could be. It is possible that this theory already exists and I was unaware, so I'm sorry, but that's how business goes. As, in my opinion, Cold Hands is a son of Craster, Those familiar with the redneck wildling culture will know that Craster marries his daughters and takes his sons out to be turned into ice zombies. And Craster himself is supposedly the son of a brother of the Night's Watch and a wildling woman, commonly believed to be Brynden Rivers, which is perhaps how and why Cold Hands wears black clothing of the Night's Watch, as it belonged to Brynden beforehand. This would perhaps explain why Cold Hands helps Sam and Gilly, given that they are travelling with his half-brother. So perhaps Cold Hands somehow managed to break free from the tyranny of the others and now works in the service of his grandfather and possibly simultaneously great-great-grandfather. Or maybe all White Walkers are like this because we haven't really seen much of them in the story. I'm pretty sure the series will end with some form of an alliance between the Westerosi and the others, which perhaps absolutely means a betrothal between Jon Snow and Cold Hands. I mean, think about it. Don't think about it. People have also theorized the connection between Cold Hands and the Night's King, a first man who supposedly married another. However, I'm going to go even further back. That's right, I have another theory. Cold Hands is even older, because you see, Cold Hands is Azor Ahai, or the Prince That Was Promised, or the last hero. And when I say the last hero, I mean the last hero of the last long night. This provides some evidence as to why he helps Bran reach the Three-Eyed Crow in order to unlock his full potential of becoming a Warg and Greenseer in order to thwart the next Long Night. It also must mean that Sam is important, otherwise why would he help him? Maybe he just thought Sam was a cool guy like us. Anyway, speaking of Karth, Quaithe is perhaps the most mysterious character in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is saying something. She appears to Daenerys in Karth and says some trippy stuff about going east to go west or something. Many have equated her with Shiera Seastar, one of the bastards of Aegon IV, and therefore a half-sister of Brynden. The evidence for this is that Shiera was supposedly a sorceress who bathed in blood to keep her youth, but so is Sam, and I don't think people think Sam is Quaithe, right? Well, unlike Sam, Shiera was supposedly very beautiful, with many calling her the most beautiful woman in the world, because I guess there are absolutely no negative side effects to incest, according to George R. R. Martin, who has 2 sisters, by the way. Anyway, people believe that the Mask of Quaithe is how Shiera hides her famous beauty, though she does apparently have different eyes to Quaithe. However, with a glamour, anyone can be anyone in this world. God, why am I even making this video? Melisandre is able to transform Rattleshirt into Mance Rayder using a glamour, so why not the same for Shiera being Quaithe? People also believe that Quaithe might be Ashara Dane for some weird reason, because Ashara died mysteriously and Quaithe is mysterious too. There's also the theory that Quaithe could be Nymeria, who famously sailed west of Westeros, which may fit in with Quaithe's speech about going east to go west because the world is actually a globe. But basically, whenever a new mysterious woman is mentioned in the history of A Song of Ice and Fire, the fandom immediately thinks it could be Quaithe. Or maybe Quaithe is a time-travelling Bran from the future who then teaches Daenerys how to greensea into the past to influence events, and they work together to stop Craster from ever being born, thereby depleting the forces of the others. Long story short, Benjen equals Daario equals Euron equals Cold Hands equals Quaithe equals Griff. Well, we've all had fun today, and in the end, isn't that what theorizing is all about? It is time once again to spin the wheel and receive the next theory, so... Alright, then it seems I'll be discussing a certain Brother of the Night's Watch next video.